Hey guys, it's Ollie from Rad Season. Welcome to the Rad Season show. I'm super excited to be joined today by entrepreneur, marketer, content creator, and founder of Groundswell Origins, Scott Martin. Scott,
Well, how you doing?
how
Good to
are
see
you,
you.
man?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I'm hailing from Calgary, Canada, just at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains.
Nice. And how's it been over there recently?
Well, I mean, the weather's been stifling hot, for the summer, but now it's getting a little cooler, and we just noticed yesterday there's snow in the mountains. So, I always get the itch this time of year for frothing for the pals. So it's that time of year.
Nice. Like when does that normally begin? Is it sort of like end of November, or is it a bit earlier?
Sometimes if it's early season dumps, you can get out skiing. I mean, if you want to go hike for it, you can go sooner. But
Yeah.
I think the season starts early season can be from the middle of November to early December, and it can be a little bit rodeo too if it's not a lot of base.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Well, I guess I'd love to jump straight into it if that's okay.
Yeah.
And sort of go back to how you got into action sports, and because you originally grew up in Calgary, is that right?
Well, actually, I did, but I didn't. Believe it or not, my action sports started when my dad was an entrepreneur, and he did quite well for himself in carpet and drapery, and retired and volunteered his time for like 10 years of his life. And
Oh, okay.
we went down to California because my dad was doing these little missions in South America and all around the world. And we moved to Orange County, California. That was the first experience of sort of action sports for me, because I show up there from Canada and everybody's wearing Vans and we're skateboarding and all that stuff. And so my first experience was in skateboarding, believe it or not, in Orange County. And I was fell in love with my first brand I ever fell in love with was called the Big O Skateboard Park. It's a shirt that I got for my birthday that I wore for years, and it's because I was part of this. Like, if you had the shirt for the Big O Skateboard Park, it was like super special, right? Super unique. And then we moved to the Philippines. I was
Okay.
for a number of years. I had a pet monkey, and we also had a period of time where I was actually in private school, and then we moved back to Canada. So I have had traveled a little bit as a kid. That's a little different, but mostly Canada.
And then when did you get into windsurfing? Was that kind of when you're back in Canada, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think my brain has always been on ever since I remember as a little kid we went to Hawaii, and then when the Philippines, you can see you can see behind me there's a little red surfboard that I handmade. That's actually hollow, made out of wood. I made that with my dad as a kid in the Philippines because we were going to go to the ocean and on this trip, and I was like, I was so excited about, just because I had my skateboard magazines that had surfing in it, and I was just like, I need to have one. So we built it. It's actually hollow, and we sanded it. It's got
That's
the
sick.
Terry Lopez. I remember he was like the most amazing surfer at the time. Like, it's got to be red, it's got to be yellow lightning bolt, and that. So I've always kind of had that ever since California. I've always kind of been on it. But when I was going through high school, everybody was studying, and I was literally sketching and dreaming about moving to the North Shore. So I'd leave like class and school when the snow would melt, and we used to duct tape, dishwasher gloves. Didn't have that much equipment then, and go windsurfing and go to this place called Kehoe Lake. Me and my buddy Jamie, and we started windsurfing. I had a VW van, and literally, I couldn't wait to get out of high school. I didn't graduate. I had 99 credits, 1 credit short of graduating, and just saved up my money and then moved to the North Shore. I literally just packed up $800 in my pocket, and I ended up staying there almost 2 years, and started pursuing windsurfing as much as I could.
And what did you do over there for jobs? Were you kind of just doing whatever you could
Oh,
get?
yeah. So that was like going over there was very challenging because I was Canadian, so I can't just take any job. So I had to work under the table, and I worked a number of really various different jobs, like odd jobs that I could. But I ended up working landscaping, and that was tough work because for me, the landscaping, I was there to windsurf, and so I was working like 5 days a week, and I lived for the weekends. But I didn't care because I was in Hawaii, and I was like digging irrigation ditches and building retaining walls. It was in I think in Kanapali, and I was working with some local Hawaiians as well. And I was kind of their mule, and it took me, there was an event that actually turned the corner where I gained their respect. And it wasn't short thereafter. I was like, I kind of admitted to the owner, and I'm like, I got to maybe get a different job. And they liked me because I showed up to work. Most people in Hawaii, when his surf was up or it was rain, I remember showing up one day for work, nobody was there. And I was like, why is nobody here? And he's like,
it's pumping, everyone's out.
Pumping. Right? It's like, you're here to surf, are you not? Like, he goes, like, nobody showed up. Like, I'm like, oh, like, I didn't know that was a thing, right? So anyway, so I ended up they ended up actually putting me in this amazing job where I was like watering plants, and you can see from my backdrop here, I just love plants, and it was like this jungle nursery that I got to water every morning. And 11:30, I had to lock up, and I got to go windsurf every day. And I hit repeat on that for a year and a bit. It was a dream.
Nice. And what did you do then? So did you want to do another season after that and kind of keep it going? Or
yeah, so what I did was, so that's kind of exactly what it is. Like I left. I kind of felt like I could have stayed there longer, but something was just like going, maybe I should go home. And I was like, I don't know what I was thinking. I left in November. I remember the waves were coming up as I was leaving, and I'm like, I'm going back into Canadian winter. But it was really like when I came back and it hit me in the face, like it was just so cold and gnarly, and I was like, okay, enough of this. And I literally just saved up and was back for a couple winters. Like I just came back and did a couple winters, and then. But the truth is, in that transition time of coming back in the winters, the wind isn't as good then, and I started falling in love with surfing. And that's when from there, I actually didn't go back to Hawaii. I started traveling to Central America and stuff, and just surfing, like, Baja and California and West Coast.
Nice. And yeah, were you then, so were you like kind of working like back in Canada, saving up and then going off and
yes, pretty much
going on road trips?
Pretty much like, so, do you want me to kind of give you a little bit more of the whole
Yeah,
story?
it'd be good to get.
Okay, so it's so as I was doing all that, I would just basically work on bartending or waiting tables, and as far as I was concerned, it was like every dollar I made went towards snowboarding, surfing, traveling. I just, like, to me, it was just all, that was it. That was my entire life. Every dollar was fixated on what my next trip was going to be, and my equipment. And I did that for a number of years. And one of the things that I did along the way was read books. And I was really always interested in business. And I remember going to Costa Rica, and coming back from that trip, I'd taken a long detour following a girlfriend, long story short, and found myself deported in Miami airport. And I bought a book called Awaken the Giant Within with Tony Robbins. And that book set me on a very different trajectory of life, where I really started leaning into personal development and business books. And at that time, when I got back, within a month, I was working as an assistant manager at a very new franchise, and had direct access with a very successful business owner. And he handed me this book called The Pursuit of Excellence, which, ironically, actually, this wasn't even intentional. Just, I literally was
just say that.
This is the actual book here. Because I was just looking at I found this in our bathroom. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the original one. So this is actually what started my whole journey around what I am doing today, marketing, and it started with customer service. That this idea about this book about businesses that could be something more. And I can appreciate it. As an athlete, I was like always striving to be like this pursuit of excellence. I wanted to be a professional windsurfer, but I was like, those Hawaiians, and there's people with so much far talent. I enjoyed it. Like, I was playing at the highest of levels. Like, Jamie and I were probably, top 10 in Canada, if you will. But just to compete against them, it just wasn't realistic. But I just loved that pursuit, always. And so for me, it was immersion. If there's a story that kind of you can see that you start leading up to, what leads to today, is that I went into Hawaii, I went into full immersion. And in a short amount of time, because I just lived, eat, breathed, anything I did. I mean, I literally lost a girlfriend who came over to stay with me in Hawaii. And I said, look, this is the deal. I'm here to windsurf. I'm here to train. This relationship's amazing, but it's like, it takes second seat. And that lasted like not even a month. I think it lasted a month or something. And, it's like, but I was very intentional. I was like, really, and I've always been that way, been very like going to full immersion. I get kind of and I can't believe how much skill you can gain in that time. I'm sure people, your listeners that are into sports, they realize like that is really how you excel, is just like eating and breathing and being around people and being people who are better than you with it, like that whole association, right?
Mhm.
So that's something that I've continued to do. And so I started reading these books, I started immersing myself around entrepreneurs, immersing myself around really successful business people and looking at what were they doing. And to me, I saw that as my next adventure, to be honest with you. I saw that as being I remember I actually had my first business card for myself was it said Scott A. Martin. It was on recycled paper. I brought it to Costa Rica, one of my big surf trips, but I misspelled entrepreneur. I got to find the thing. Someone pointed out to me like a year later at a bar. They're like, "Hey, wait a minute, I think you spelled this wrong." And I've been passing those out like candy, and so of course, spell check wasn't around at that time, and I'm surprised the printer allowed it to go off the press. But that's just another matter. But for me, I've always identified with being an entrepreneur, and this is before people are like, "What's an entrepreneur? What does that really mean?" And now it's in the lexicon. It's so pervasive. But back in the day, I always viewed myself as an outsider, as that was just sort of like I just saw these entrepreneurs as these rebels and stuff. These ones that they wrote their own ticket. And for me, it was about, how do I run a business so I can go do the surfing, windsurfing, snowboarding? How can I do all the stuff I love and still live a good lifestyle? And that pursuit, that immersion just kind of continued. And I ended up getting an opportunity when I was boarding, not more than about a year and a half after that, after surfing. I it was right at the beginning of .com, and I got an opportunity to work with an entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and this is when I had to go to people and go, you need to be off Yellow Pages, you need to be on this thing called the internet. And so people are like, what is that? So it's like literally right there. And I was selling websites, and I was so unbelievably successful with that they decided to prop me into my own .com and create my own .com company, because there's just funding was just flying if you had any sort of concept. And my first company was called Future Serve, and Future Serve was based on the future of the search of excellence, which is customer service. I was like, that's going to be the future. It's like customer service, this highest level will be on the internet. And we ended up renaming to NextClick, which was focused on personalization, which is one-to-one marketing technologies that I saw at the time then was incredible as a way of creating these intimate relationships. I was fascinated with the technology, from collaborative filtering, which is what you see on Amazon, which says it magically gives a recommendation. Like, how do you know, right? Like it's basically relational databases that can look at clusters and other people like you, and then it matches. So I was like so deep in this technology, and I started a company called NextClick that was focused on personalization technologies. And as I was going through that journey, being the keen book reader that I was, about reading anything about personalization, I came across this book. I wish I could remember the title. It was like how IBM helped the Nazis, but it was like the table I found it in was in personalization. I'm like, what does this guy do with personalization? When I found out that the first personalization engine was this Holgerith, I think, technology that they used to identify the Jews, and that just made my stomach sick. And I was like, what in the world? I'm perpetuating something that could be done for evil. At the time, it was like a gut punch. And I started, and again, immersion. I found somebody who actually had done a nonprofit and had made impact and change. I had two mentors. I worked with a PR agency in Boston, Massachusetts. And, I think a year later, I got Don Peppers, the guy who pretty much started the personalization industry. We had on the board. I was president of the board, and I'm in my early 20s. American Airlines, United Airlines, PricewaterhouseCoopers, you name it. Every personalization technology company. It was all about ethical information management and self-regulating. So I really put my dent in the universe. And then just when it was just starting to take steam, and we actually filed with the FTC about self-regulation and transparency, the .com crash came, and that the funding for it kind of just collapsed in it as well. But I really felt like that was like another example of immersion and really following your values and what your interests were in. That's the sort of through line. Do you want me to pause here? Because you probably have some questions.
Yeah, I mean, so then like growing up, like and then building that team, and how many people did you take it to before the .com?
Oh, NextClick I think was like around 15 people or something.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was good. I mean, at the time, and on one hand, see, the thing is, that was really weird is that they were so into building. This was the beginning of my journey of what is sustainable growth marketing, because I had this impasse where I took their advice, and I was like, but if we keep doing all this stuff, we're not actually making income. But they're like, no, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's about market share and it's about visibility, right? And I'm like, and then when it came down to like, this whole thing was imploding. I'm going, had we maintained what I was suggesting, which was cash flowing through services like website development and stuff, we would have sustained and we would have continued to grow.
Yeah.
I believe it could have still been a juggernaut for a digital agency to this day. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I knew what I knew, but not enough to either fund it, push up against it, or whatever. And that was the first lesson of sustainable growth. I'm like, that none of that was sustainable. It was like it was like a paper tiger. The whole .com boom. Like you think about how many people are going to be the next biggest thing, and they're gone, right? It's because they weren't working on fundamentals. They weren't working on cash flow. So to me, that was a really the salty lesson of that company going down. My dad gave me some advice, and he said, because I could have, like, when it was, I knew the company was gonna close down. I had some job offers right at the gate, and he said, no. He goes, you're the captain of the ship. Be the last one in the door, and experience this. He goes, it could be something that will just very few people get to experience, and goes, just go through it and go through the whole process. And it was really tough because you have to deal with vendors and stuff about them being so upset not getting paid, because we were doing all this stuff on our investors to grow and expand. And so that salty taste served me really well. It was great advice, because that's part of sustainable growth marketing, is like, I never want to experience that again. I want resilience so I don't have to experience that. And so these are things that have led towards what I'm doing today. Excuse me.
And you were then the last one standing, obviously, sort of like taking that advice on board.
In fact, I actually did a Globe and Mail article, totally transparency, going, this is what we did wrong. I didn't just hide it. I was actually public about it. I decided to lean into it and be vulnerable about it, that, you know what, I was an idiot.
And did you then sort of like what did you do after that? Were you then looking for a new role, or did you want to start your own, like start another business? Or
no, I didn't think I had the capacity at that time to go on my own. I mean, I just had two little kids, and so I had two offers. One was someone named Arlene Dickinson, which was venture. She's like the Dragon's Den in Canada.
Okay.
Her number two at the time, and she had saw what I'd done for visibility and marketing the business, and my experience in personalization, which was like sort of new leading edge. And then I got, and she kind of took a little time to make an offer with me. And I was about to take the offer, but then Ted, the owner of a company called Critical Mass, came to me, and in a matter of like 24 hours, they just they met with me. They were like, look, we're going to get you to focus on building this. You can bring one of your team members with you. You can go to New York, Boston, Chicago, and totally go after these large brands. We'll coach you, mentor you. You're representing Nike, Mercedes, all these different brands. And we actually have two of the biggest personalization engines, which was at the time was Procter & Gamble's Reflect product, personalizing on-the-fly, on-demand manufacturing makeup, and Nike's configuration engine. And they were also dabbling in the configuration engine for automotive with Mercedes. So I was like, this is a dream come true. I mean, I can like get real experience instead of theoretical experience, like because we're such a startup, and get right into it. So I took the job. Arlene wasn't happy, but I had to kind of do what was right for me, and I ended up spending a fair amount of time basically learning from them and pitching to big companies. It was great.
And were they sort of doing like everything across marketing, or were they sort of focused on one particular area?
They were focused on digital.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm sure they're doing a lot more than that now, but at the time, it was digital, is what the core focus was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I'd like to think that that's how I started, was digital. I mean, everything was the most. That was you didn't have to know much. You just had to know more than everyone, a little bit more than everyone else, to kind of be ahead of the curve. Where the traditional, I had to catch up with that, and so my career, I ended up doing more digital and working with a couple. I left Critical Mass after 9/11, because that's basically. The owner said, look, there's going to be no work coming out of New York. That's your focus, or even other states. So they just kind of said, look, that's it. That's a wrap. So I ended up working consulting for a number of companies. And the last company that I was with kind of left me with a really salty taste. And it was really around this concept of practicing extreme billing. And it didn't make sense. There's, again, another sustainable component there. Where I was like, you want me to overbill the client or try to prop that up? It didn't feel right. And I had this really great client that I was trying to court, and we lost them as a result of it being a little greedy, and it just didn't feel right. And I was like, you know what, enough. And I decided at that point I was going to go on my own. And I said to my soon-to-be partner, who was me, he and I were the ones that were doing the majority of the work and the sales of the company. I said, if you ever leave, let's partner up. Let's come up with a company. I think a week later, he's like, okay, I'm done. He couldn't handle it either. He was both it just went against our values. So we started SDMG, and we only literally, like, I think I said, hey, so the day after, 2 days, I think it was the day after he made this, I go, I can get the client back that we actually talked to. And then I phoned him back again, going, I got a meeting with Sears. And I said, I have another meeting with Calgary Flames. Can you make some business cards? Like, literally, like, we are have back-to-back meetings over the next couple of days. So that night, like, literally in the middle of the night, he had to think of what brand our brand was going to be, because we had no cards, we had nothing. And he just went online, looked for like ready-made logos, and it was laundry symbols. So he just found laundry symbols. And then I already knew the name of the company. I was going to call it Strategic Direct Marketing Group. I wanted it to be like not. I wanted to move the pendulum away from .com to feel a little bit more like it was traditional, and focus on direct response, not doing anything that we can't measure, because me and Mike were obsessed with being able to measurable technologies. And so we saw that as being what we're going to do. And he ended up coming up with the tagline on the fly called "Get Sparkling Marketing Solutions Without Being Taken to the Cleaners." And we signed all 3 clients. It was great. Nice. And so that led to 10 years of working on my own agency. We had about 12, 15 staff and a bunch of contractors. And during that journey was great. Like, I got to work with a lot of big brands. But one of the things that was starting to eat at me a little bit or whatever was I was kind of like yearning for that, for my extreme sports. I was like, my kids were getting a little older. And I was thinking, I really want to clean it. So I went and did a snowboard trip to a place called Revelstoke. They had this little ad on the internet. It was like $200, and you get like, I think it was $200, 2 days, cat skiing and a hotel. And I'm like, and the cat skiing at the time is like, to me, was like, I'd never done it, but I knew I never could afford it at the time. And I was like, that's a deal. So me and my buddy went, and I lost my mind. I was like, so today that resort, that place we went, is now what's called Revelstoke Mountain Resort. But we had so you had 1 cat, 12 people in what would be the equivalent of any size of a ski resort you could imagine. So, I remember that day, that first time, I mean, you couldn't have like put boards and duct tape on my legs to hold them up. I was so tired, because there's one pitch that's like 2,000 vert, and it's called Snow Rodeo. And it's just, you had to stop like 6 times, and you're just like, your heart's coming to your chest and it's wide open. It's just like, like a big air squadron hitting this big POW run. And it's like, I was like, what is this? And so that led to pretty much the next 12 years of my obsession of powder.
And did you then link that to business? Did that was sort of like where you saw some opportunity and you thought, like, I don't know, maybe you could help them out a little bit with digital? And
not quite. It was sort of, so here's how the progression happened. Was I came back and I'm like, and I hit it again. I was like, I told the owner, going, if you give me that same deal, I'll buy a package. I'll come back. So I went back a couple times, and I found another place in Fernie, and I went there. So I was kind of doing that. And I was literally at the point where I was like, at work, I was distracted. I was looking at the snow, tracking the weather. And I told Mike, hey, Mike, I'm going to take Monday off, because this is going to be, so I was starting to really bleed into my life. And at that time, something else emerged. Another new emergence came, which was social media. And I thought to myself, I go, if I'm going to lead this digital and direct response company, I need to understand what the social media thing is. So I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to write a blog about cat skiing. That's it. That was literally just how it was. I was going to start a blog about cat skiing, and so I'd take pictures, with my, with the people that were with me and stuff. And the progression of that, and was like, obviously, like, oh, I got a Facebook account. Oh, I can post pictures. And people are like, oh my God, look at these pictures. And it just gave me energy. Like, oh man, this is really good content, right? And so I just, like, for the next 2 years, I literally started. I started cat skiing at one place, and the guy said, "What do you do? Marketing." And that's what got me really going, because he said, "Let's exchange marketing for cat skiing." I'm like, so down with that. That was Fernie Wilderness Adventures, and only took 1 year, and I totally transformed their sales. I mean, to this day, they're always so gracious. I've really rebranded, and they've been busy ever since. And I stayed with them for a number of years. But what I did was I started marketing them, and other cat skiing companies went, Scott, can you help us? And that was when I started realizing, okay, the power of social media. So doing, social media marketing, content marketing that was emerging, but there's something else that kind of emerged, this whole collaboration, this co-opetition thing. So I was like, basically born out of being ambitiously lazy, going, how can I market all of them sustainably without, without like the same effort of doing them individually? So I came up with the concept going, I'm going to create this marketing arm called Heli Skiing and Cat Skiing Canada. First it was Cat Skiing Canada. And I started propping that up so I could put, so I had it my own, so I became my own magazine. So I still would promote and do it on my blog and still promote and give them content for their site. But then I just basically treated my own site like my own magazine. Well, people are like, cat skiing, most people didn't even know what it was. So, but the fact that I created this feed and all this stuff around it really galvanized and started me making this connection of, oh, wait a minute, I can actually connect and do this extreme sports stuff. And this is before content marketing. This is when GoPros, this is still GoPros hadn't shown up on scene yet, right? So, this is we didn't know what to call it. It wasn't called content marketing at the time. It was just like, this is what we're doing. So what led into that was I started working with the owners, and they would go, we got this film crew that's coming. And they would be these athletes, right, from Burton or whatever. And we don't know how to really properly like manage this. Like they come in, and what happens is with a lot of the resorts at the time was they would come in and they'd bring these athletes, they come in, they'd use heli time or cat time, and then they hope they get a mention in the back of the movie, right? Or something. It
would be magazines and it would be videos, right?
Right. Yeah. But what was happening for a lot of these cat skiing and heli, they had the best content, like the platforms. Like you can imagine the type of content you get at a resort versus what you get heli skiing, cat skiing there's no comparison, right?
Yeah.
But they weren't getting that boost in the way the reputation unless they had no way of checking on that. So what I was doing is going, hey, I was negotiating with them going, okay, I'm going to film with you. And I started learning how they filmed. I started seeing how they promote. And I started creating sort of rules with them going, look, if I want to get 50% of this content or whatever. And I started really figuring out this whole thing. And I changed the industry to where they basically, would have forms where you have to actually, when you show us up on screen, so what would happen is if you're a filmmaker and you want to have this perfect scene of like pow, 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 right? You might be different locations. And what I negotiated was if your skier is at our location, I need to see a location indication. I want somebody in the sitting in the seat going, oh, that's at this cat skiing operation. You paid for it. We're giving you like an unbelievable access. That's only fair. And frankly, the people that are watching, they want to know where they can go get that. So it's a win, right? So that was actually my little dent in the universe for the cat skiing, heli skiing industry. Like changed the way crews showed up. I don't think the film crews were very happy with me, but I became a film crew because I sort of was their disenchantment was like I saw an opportunity. I'm like, you're so focused on your film, you're not thinking about the needs of this owner. And I started getting, this is where the connection of my love for the sport and business, I started thinking inside the head of an entrepreneur of these poor guys that are these small, not poor, but like they're these ones owning these they're usually family operated businesses, heli skiing, cat skiing businesses. And you have to understand when you run that company, it is a very, very difficult business. So many of your listeners own adventure sports companies. They all can really lean in and appreciate this. You have a season. And if that season has bad weather, it gets smaller. And there's all these different things that come back. You have also restrictions like right now, COVID. You think that makes it really hard?
Yeah.
A travel and all these different things. So it's like when you have a seasonal business that's at this caliber, you have a small window to make money. And so I saw them as being, I want to be their advocate. So I really saw that as going, how can I help them sort of expand their season, market them? So our film crews, what we did is we just also made content that would relate to someone that's in Chicago. That would be their really best client. Most people think that these clients are the most extreme sports. Most of those people go hike and get it themselves. They can't afford it. But the people that really show up at these heli skiing, cat skiing operations they kind of want that, say, hey, I went heli skiing, but they actually have the money to do it. And what the reality is that most heli skiing is pretty benign. And so what we did was we wanted to show what it's really like. We made it fun because I had guys that would pop off stuff. But we didn't make it so it's like, oh my gosh, you're going off a 15-foot cliff, because it wasn't realistic. We made it attainable, and we focused on content that was for them, and we focused on their needs so that we could, when we created content, we were in partnership with them. And that was that was the real next step of this whole sustainable growth marketing, seeing how they didn't have to pay for ads anymore. If we made great content, that would actually remove the need for paid advertising. And that actually, what I did was I actually I worked with Purcell Heli Skiing, and what I did there was they said, Scott, we trust you. Like, we're all bought into what you do. Can you help us, guide us to a different future? And so we ideated on that. I actually did a podcast called Having the Courage to Reinvent. And they really did lean into that. And they actually created a sustainable model, removing the need. They had what's called the Yodel, the Call of the Mountains. And they used that as a core mechanism to be able to book and also expand and really gain control of sort of like the ebb and flow and the up and down of sales. Because it's really hard to manage when you've got, like, say 30 seats and then 10 are booked and you got 20 that are last minute bookings. Like, the amount of energy, time, and frustration and uncertainty and gas and guides and all this stuff when you're doing these last minute fills is very taxing.
Yeah.
So we just basically create a little bit more of a new base for them, right? And we also looked at a bigger vision of what that could mean, which is they wanted to create a customer experience. They felt that they had to bring on more and more guests to maintain the revenue. And what it was they also felt that the customer experience, the product they're offering, even though the product was amazing, they just wanted a level of service. And I really honored them for really wanting to create a standard for which they want to do. So we just created a migration strategy. Now, fast forward 4 years later from that plan, is they actually ended up, they literally, like, when year over year, they were more profitable, then they started having less. They actually flew with less clients and made more money, to the point where they actually just 3 weeks ago just sold.
Oh, nice.
And it sold for multiples, and it's because of this whole plan of sustainable growth marketing.
And did you sort of see that then that could then be transferred into, or doing that for different companies, different sports, and sort of aligning that with other passions, right? I mean, because I think we, like years ago, I first found out about what you were doing through some of those communities or some of those groups on Facebook, and there's a couple of surfing ones that you started, and so, like, did it sort of go from cat skiing, and then you thought, okay, like, we can look at different kind of niches?
So what I did was, like, that's a really interesting point. It's like, it was an experiment of mine. It's like, I did so well with cat skiing and heli skiing, but it was content that we were producing.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like, to me, I'm always experimenting. That's like one thing in normally is I'm always like, okay, what else is new? I'm always like trying something new and experience. But I love surfing. I love surf art. So what I was like, I'm already like consuming this content anyways. I'm already like reposting my own personal thing. I'm like, why don't I just make like a Surfing Canada, which is now surfing.eco, which is a group and I would just share content on surfing. And it was like, to me, it was like, I'm consuming it anyways. I might as well create. I ended up creating, I think I have like 12,000 or something people that were on there. But the real insight came with surfing art. I love surfing art. And what I did there was going, I'm not going to produce any content. That's actually where I started going, I wonder if it would be sustainable if I actually created a community. Can I create a community where I was the curator and just bringing people together on a topic? And that was what I did. So now I'm like, I think I still have the largest community in the world for surf art. I'm actually about to break off and create a private community. I have some ideas on how to help them make revenue on their art ongoing. I can't tell you what that is, but it's really freaking cool. And like subscription models and stuff. So I'm looking at all these different things, but that's where I started diversifying groups to see what if I could duplicate that, but have to do it with less effort. So again, it's my ambitiously lazy part of me, but still want to stay connected to the industry.
Yeah. And then were you kind of doing that across multiple social platforms? So then when Instagram came along, for example, we then sort of thinking, okay, well, we can take this and kind of, we can build communities on there as well, and so on and so on, right?
Yeah, no, quite. I mean, like literally, I view marketing as an ecosystem. As soon as a new channel emerges, I'm like, oh, except for, believe it or not, TikTok came up, and I was early on it. I've secured all my, the URLs that I wanted, but I didn't put any energy into it. I was just like, it was kind of reminding me of Vine, and I just was like, it's not sustainable. Even though it's taken off, I'm just like not. I just haven't leaned into it. But for the most part, what I've always done is a new channel emerges, I test and I try it. I've built a community. So pretty much in each one of these, I'm like, oh, how does it work on Twitter? How does it work on Instagram? And I would do what's called, cross-channel migration. How do we get someone from Instagram to go over to Facebook or vice versa, right? So those are all marketing experiments about, how to do that. Now, one of the challenges that emerged that's even leaned in further to what my book, which is called Groundswell and Sustainable Growth Marketing, is this one thing that was really ticking me off. I had like, I don't know, I think combined I have hundreds of thousands of followers across like snowboarding, surfing. I have my own Facebook at 16. And I was reaching less and less people. Less and less likes were emerging. And these are communities. I'm not trying to make any money from this. So Facebook is just basically slowly going, I'm doing this as a service.
Yeah.
And they're just going, doesn't matter, whatever. Like, we're going to make you pay if you want to get access to it. And I didn't quite recognize it, but then I started seeing it doing the same thing across platforms. And I'm realizing, they got to make their money. You have to follow the money, and you realize that, really these platforms are not looking out for you. And a lot of these businesses that are like, even especially with the heli skiing, cat skiing, their businesses are built on these platforms because that's where people are talking about the passions.
Yeah.
And I saw this as being, oh, wait a minute, I see a canary in the coal mine here. I need to help. I now have identified it. And so the past 5 years, I've been researching, applying on how to be sustainable and getting off those platforms, how to leverage them without actually being controlled by them. Because right now, I would argue to guess that if you have an adventure sport business, I would say 90% of you, maybe more, rely on Instagram or so YouTube or any of those channels. If they change their tune, they change their access, they do something to you, your business is completely vulnerable. You think you own your business. He who owns the sail owns the business. You may have the business, you may have the equipment, you may have the mountain, but if you don't have the access to the customer, and this is where I feel like I'm an advocate for you, because I believe that you want to have a direct contact and you want to have direct control of your client. But these platforms are really powerful, and they're really great ways to amplifying your content and getting access. You just be disciplined and really think long term how to build a relationship directly with your customers. And by doing so, that's the game changer. That's just that first mindset is the game changer of you being able to be sustainable as a business.
Which is sort of the same of like being under the whim of, say, SEO and Google, and if things change there on search and they're not being able to be found, and like as soon as they're doing a big algorithm change, then there's a shift. And then exactly like having ownership of whether it's a proper database which you own, and having that list. Is that then like the whole kind of, I guess, ethos of Groundswell? Was that sort of like what was the reason for building it in the first place, and what was kind of like the backstory there?
Yeah, the origin story of Groundswell, it's like it kind of feels like it's a little bit of happy accident and maybe universe working for you.
Yeah.
I came up with the name a long time ago. In fact, I showed my wife my business plan that I had this sketch called Groundswell and this company, and this was before SDMG. Before my company 20 years ago was going to call it Groundswell on my own. I was going to go on my own, and that was my name. So I had this name and I forgot about it. But when I started the company, I was like, oh, I think I want to do something that's like something that was so I could really lean into this using, because I was already so involved in extreme sport. I was like thinking about, I was going to actually create an agency for extreme sports. That was my initial origin story, because I already had a film company called Laundromat Studios filming extreme sports. We were doing stuff for Gore-Tex, for the ski companies. And I'm like, natural migration would be then I do the marketing and strategy for these brands, because I already have relationship affinity. I know how to do content. It was just like a really good match. But that was there. But this bigger problem that I saw is an ethical problem, as I saw as a economic unfairness problem, as I saw, people not recognizing this challenge. And I saw myself as being, how can I, pursue helping businesses and sustainable. So I'm like, I'm just going to maintain this strategy of thinking about what can I do to look at the patterns and do it and start working with clients on that. Yeah. And that became, the research was the actual clients that I was working with. And so that to me is what became the beginning of Groundswell. And it also at the same time is I've always been observant. And so many of you that love extreme sports, there's these lessons that we share. It's like hard to explain unless you go on that hike and you do that underwater trip or whatever it is, those extreme sports. And even as an athlete, you have these moments you go, only we know the feeling, right? And to me, I started looking at the elements, the lessons I learned from powder, from surfing and the universe. And it's like starting to go like the universe and looking at natural laws and going, how could that be applied to this? Because that's just like, to me, it's like the energy of the ocean is like sustainable, like the like, so I was looking at these patterns, and so what I really developed was my build, give, grow, transform was based on how groundswell is formed.
Mhm.
And it's like, and it's proven to be exactly on point. I've vetted and tested over the number of years. So that's where it's like, it's kind of two forces that kind of came together to what I am today. And the book is really about how to build your own personal groundswell, which is sustainable growth marketing. It's not the only way to do sustainable growth marketing, but it's the way to do sustainable growth marketing if the aim of your business is to make the world a better place, to help people's lives be richer, grow personally. It could be like, it doesn't mean you have to save the world. It can mean you're just helping people connect to nature and be better versions of themselves by doing a hike. It doesn't really, to me, all that is a major impact and a positive one on the world. That's what this book is aimed to do, is to really connect with you and to show you that you can become a groundswell, and that the idea is over time, the cost and energy of marketing goes down and your growth goes exponential. And the through line of that is that the bigger the why, the bigger the impact that you aim to have on the world. If you aim to like, not just if you move people, like, okay, you moved me because I went snowboarding, I got some, that's one thing. But then if you change me because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be the same like I was, when I first tried cat skiing, but then I transformed. When you transform me going, and I literally didn't. I went one time in the last 18 years, I went to a hill. One time. That transformed me going, I'm never going to a ski hill. I hate to be a snob, but I'm like, this is to me is what it is. This is what snowboarding is to me. That transformed me. And because I was compelled to tell other people, I created Cat Skiing Canada. I created all this content. I created Groundswell. That was me being observant in my own life about what actually drove me. And what people can't underestimate is these people with these passions in these sports. You could use that energy you have for the passion you have and apply it and just bring it into what you're doing in some way, shape, or form, because it gives you this energy that I can tell you that I have for my business, because it's like, it just reminds me of everything that I that goes back to that moment where I remember being at Hukipa, and it was like almost like 3/4 mast high, and it was like only a few of us out. It was perfect day, and I remember just going, like, the blissfulness of it. And it kind of like, I can always go back to these moments, and so that's what I would offer to people that are listening today.
Nice. And what else have you got coming up? I mean, you've been writing quite a lot. You were saying when we previously spoke, and
yeah, so I'm launching a book that'll be out in the spring called Groundswell. I've actually got 3 books after that. The next one is called Sound Waves. I'm doing research on right now, which is the future of audio, sound, and voice. After that is Title Shift, which is the future. We're leaving the age of attention. We're moving to this age of trust. It's like a bit of a futurist book, but it's really showing where things are going. So it's a bit of a guide of like where that North Star needs to be for a lot of businesses that really want to make an impact in the world. And the last one is probably the first one everybody wanted me to write, which was Tsunami Startups, how to actually do rapid and create massive momentum. But I purposely did that one last because, I think a lot of people want rapid growth, but they do it on a foundation of sand. They're not actually, you see the rise of these startups, they don't have the energy to sustain and stuff. And to me, it's like, I did a lot of work around growth hacking, and I saw that it's like whack-a-mole, it's like trying to find out, what algorithm changes there is on Instagram. I mean, I used to blow my brains out trying to figure out the SEO game and all stuff. And I realized it wasn't sustainable. But what is sustainable is the connection of values, the connection of purpose, the connection of passion. When people connect with you on passion, I go to a skateboard shop and, or a snowboard shop, and I see a 12-year-old, I feel like we're kindred spirit. Like, it's like, because we all share this passion for this. It doesn't matter how old you are, whatever, right? And I feel like when you can lean into that, that's a really powerful mechanism for your business. So what's next for me is I'll be doing a lot of public speaking. Once these books are out, I'm also launching Groundswell Academy, groundswell.academy if anyone's interested. My first course will be personal branding, but I'm going to be rolling out how to build a Groundswell course in the spring to launch with my book. And I have and other stuff that's just going to continue to roll out. So
cool. And what's the best way for people to follow what you're up to? And if they want to reach out to you, how can they get in contact?
My preferred point of contact is always LinkedIn, because then I can see what you're doing in business and stuff. It's Scott A. Martin on there. You type in Groundswell, you'll hit me. If you want to go to my website, it's groundswellorigins.com. And on Instagram is Scott Martin _org. And that's how you can find me.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thanks so much, man. It's been really good listening to your stories, and really insightful as well to sort of see how everything is sort of developed with marketing and with your journey and sort of what you're working on now. And we'll definitely keep an eye out, and it's going to be good to see what happens.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, buddy.
Thanks, man.
See ya.